Happy Saturday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where we discuss leading political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. And first up, the Chinese economy. China's rental housing market, the entire market, is under pressure this summer as a flood of new listings collides with weakening demand, driving rents down for nearly a year. Data from China Real Estate Information Corp published yesterday, Friday, shows that in July, individually owned rental units in 55 major cities surged to 618,000, up 12.2% from a year earlier, and 7% from June, the highest level in almost 3 years. Yet rents fell for the 11th consecutive month, averaging just $4.40 US per square meter. The increase in supply stems partly from sluggish second-hand home sales, as owners unable to sell place properties on the rental market. July usually marks peak rental season, with new graduates and families seeking housing before the school year, but this year's surge in listings has far outstripped demand. Beijing recorded the sharpest spike, with 85,000 new units added in July, nearly 50% more than in June. In the city's Haidian district, a hub for universities and technology firms, a place that I called home for about 4 years, vacant apartments are piling up. Competition from institutional landlords and government-backed affordable housing is also reshaping the market. Young tenants are opting for long-term rental complexes offering gyms, cafes, and communal amenities, even at similar price points. As a result, landlords are being forced to slash rents. CRIC data shows rates fell 3.5% year-on-year in July, with Shanghai seeing the steepest drop at nearly 12%. Analysts warn the imbalance could worsen as seasonal demand fades and more subsidized housing enters the market in coming years. The implications of all this are significant. As Peking University professor of finance Michael Pettis explains in a note yesterday, quote, "One of the most common proposals to shore up the property market prices, getting local governments to buy up empty apartments and funding these purchases, offering out cheap rentals, will not help stabilize property prices. The problem is that with rental yields in China already so low, below 2% on average, it only made sense to buy an apartment as opposed to renting one if you were certain the property prices would rise. So if local governments tried to stabilize property prices by buying up empty apartments and offering them out at so-called affordable rates, this would inevitably put downward pressure on rents, which in turn would put further downward pressure on property prices. This seems to be what has happened. According to Caixin, part of the reason rental prices are plummeting is that long-term rental apartments and government-backed affordable housing are attracting more young tenants. Plummeting property prices, by the way, are not necessarily bad. They represent a transfer of wealth from owners of multiple apartments to those who need them. For example, the young and poor, and musicians and artists, I might add, and that is overall a good thing. But losers tend to cut back on spending faster than winners increase it, and so what's good for the economy over the long term can still be painful over the short term. Outside top-tier cities, I expect property prices to decline for at least another few years." End quote. Meanwhile, China's youth unemployment is worsening again, with the rate climbing to its highest level in nearly a year in July, underscoring the growing strain on the country's labour market as a record number of graduates flood into the workforce. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, the jobless rate for urban youth aged 16 to 24, excluding students, rose to 17.8% in July, up sharply from 14.5% in June. Some analysts also believe that the real number could be much higher. The increase ended 4 consecutive months of decline and marked the highest level since August last year. The surge coincides with the graduation of 12.2 million university students this summer, many of whom are competing for a limited pool of jobs that match their qualifications. Beijing has rolled out initiatives to ease the pressure, including a nationwide campaign offering career counseling, job referrals, and training opportunities. Yet graduates face a difficult environment marked by weak domestic demand and ongoing stress in sectors such as real estate. Many young job seekers report months of searching with little success or receiving offers below their expectations. Meanwhile, unemployment among 25 through 29-year-olds also edged up to 6.9% in July, while the overall urban jobless rate ticked up to 5.2%. Next up, China has intensified its diplomatic offensive in the Pacific, demanding that the Pacific Islands Forum, PIF, amend a decades-old communique recognizing Taiwan's participation rights. The move has added fuel to already simmering geopolitical tensions ahead of the forum's annual Leaders Summit next month in the Solomon Islands. In a striking statement posted on Tuesday of this week on its official Facebook page, the Chinese embassy in Tonga called for the, quote, correction, end quote, of what it described as the, quote, erroneous Taiwan-related content in the 1992 forum communique. End quote. The embassy declared that the declaration violated Beijing's One China principle and insisted that any suggestion of Taiwan independent participation in the PIF be rescinded. Quote, the Taiwan-related content in the 1992 forum communique violated the One China principle in the first place, end quote, the embassy said, while rejecting allegations that China is interfering in Pacific regional affairs as, quote, misinformation. End quote. The Pacific Islands Forum, established in 1971 as the region's most influential multilateral body, representing 18 members including Australia, New Zealand and most Pacific Island nations. Taiwan was named a development partner with rights to participate in forum activities under the 1992 agreement. Since then, however, China has worked systematically to reduce Taiwan's international space, particularly among small island states where Beijing's economic aid and infrastructure investments have translated into growing political influence. That strategy has already shown results. In 2019, the Solomon Islands and Kiribati switched diplomatic recognition from Taipei to Beijing, aligning themselves with China's insistence that Taiwan be excluded from regional and global institutions. Last month, the Solomon Islands government, which is hosting this year's forum, announced that neither Taiwan nor China would be invited to attend the September summit. The move was widely interpreted as a compromise designed to avoid an open diplomatic clash during the gathering. Even so, Beijing's decision to publicly call out the 1992 communique has raised the stakes. Analysts say the embassy's unusually blunt tone signals both China's impatience and its determination to close what it sees as loopholes that allow Taiwan visibility on the international stage. The controversy signifies the broader dilemma facing Pacific leaders: how to preserve unity and focus on pressing regional priorities, such as climate change concerns, economic development, and security, while navigating the increasingly sharp contest between mainland China and Taiwan, and by extension between Beijing and its Western rivals. As the forum prepares to convene, the question of Taiwan's place in the Pacific remains unresolved, and China's latest demand ensures it will not stay off the agenda. Now, we have one more development to cover, but just quickly, if you're getting some value from today's episode, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you have not subscribed to China Update and you'd like to be on top of the most up-to-date analysis on this country and its broader competition with the West, consider subscribing, hit the bell notification icon, and you will be. And for those who want to help keep China Update financially sustainable, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. I rely primarily on subscriber support to keep going, so this is a tremendous help as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for the incredible ongoing support. And finally for today, Nvidia's carefully calibrated strategy for the Chinese market is hitting turbulence, with signs that US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick's blunt remarks about chip exports have fueled Beijing's move to resist purchases of the company's H20 processor. When Washington approved sales of the downgraded H20 to China in July, Lutnick told US-based CNBC, quote, "We don't sell them our best stuff, not our second best stuff. Not even our third best. You want to sell the Chinese enough that their developers get addicted to the American technology stack. That's the thinking," end quote. The comments were widely seen in Beijing as, quote, insulting, end quote, according to an exclusive report published this week by UK-based The Financial Times, and provided ammunition to Chinese regulators who are already wary of Nvidia's dominance. In recent weeks, agencies including the Cyber Administration of China, the National Development and Reform Commission, and the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology have mobilized to dissuade, to put it mildly, domestic firms from acquiring the H20. The message appears to be sticking. Some Chinese technology companies, after testing alternatives, have become more accepting of switching to domestic suppliers, such as Huawei and others, particularly for inference workloads, where performance gaps with Nvidia are narrowing. Xi Jinping himself set the tone back in April, stressing at a Politburo study session that China must, quote, concentrate resources to overcome challenges in core technologies such as high-end chips and fundamental software, and build an independent, controllable, and collaboratively functioning AI system. End quote. Lutnick's framing of Nvidia as an addictive crutch reinforces Beijing's long-standing concerns that dependence on US chips leaves the country vulnerable. The pushback is already visible on the ground. US-based The Information reported this week that Nvidia has instructed some component suppliers to halt H20 production after Chinese regulators quietly told local firms to stop buying the chip over alleged security concerns. What some might interpret as a tactic to pressure Washington into loosing restrictions instead looks like Beijing accelerating its campaign for technological self-reliance. Local governments are codifying that ambition. Shanghai has set a target of 70% AI chip self-sufficiency in data centers by 2027, while Beijing has raised that bar to 100%. Even inland cities like Guiyang, home to a cluster of new data centers, are mandating that 90% of chips be sourced domestically. For Nvidia, whose global valuation depends on China as a major market, the stakes are high. The company's next earnings report will provide the first real signal of how much Chinese demand has cooled, but the larger trend may be irreversible. Lutnick's words have not only hardened Beijing's resolve, they have given China's regulators, security establishment, and corporate champions fresh momentum to rip off the Nvidia band-aid and fast-track indigenous alternatives. Meanwhile, China's AI DeepSeek has unveiled DeepSeek v3.1, describing it as, quote, the first step toward the agent era, end quote. And alongside the release, the Hangzhou-based AI company has hinted at a major hardware advance. In a short but telling WeChat post, DeepSeek revealed that the model was designed around a new UE8M0FP8 data format, specifically targeting, quote, the upcoming next-generation domestically produced chips, end quote. If realized, such hardware would mark a critical milestone for China's AI ambitions. Current Chinese-made chips do not support FP8, a floating-point format that dramatically improves efficiency in AI training and inference at the hardware level. By contrast, Nvidia has already integrated FP8 into its H100 and H20 chips, giving it a significant edge in performance and energy savings. DeepSeek did not provide a release date or vendor details for the domestic FP8-capable chip, but the signal alone is important. A credible FP8 breakthrough would reinforce efforts to build a self-sufficient AI ecosystem and embolden policymakers and firms skeptical of continued dependence on Nvidia hardware. Whether this is a near-term rollout or a longer-term aspiration remains unclear, but for China's AI sector, DeepSeek's message is clear. The race to close the chip gap is entering a new phase. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a good Saturday, have a restful weekend, and I will see you for a new week of developments on Monday.